Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Ryan. I'm pretty pumped because I'm going to get spoiled today with 3 different, relatively newer Ryes here that I want to try. All of these are quite interesting for one reason or the other. So we have one is from Sagamore, one is Corbin Cash, and the last one is 13th Colony. Now I'll break these down each one at a time. We'll go through them and give them each a sort of review and a score and decide whether or not I recommend them. Sound good? So a bit of a triple feature here. One thing I will say right out of the gate, look at those colors. They're super dark. It's not like your golden Canadian Ryes or anything like that. This is, they got some heft to them. We'll kick things off with the Sagamore. This is their Manhattan finished rye. So what the heck is Manhattan? Do they make like a Manhattan cocktail, put it in a barrel, and then empty the barrel and put the whiskey in? So what they did is they kind of took it like one component at a time. Like, what are the core ingredients of a Manhattan? So here's what they did. It's like 4 to 6 year old rye whiskey. And then what they're doing is they're splitting that up and they're finishing it in 3 different barrels. You've got a vermouth barrel, a bitters barrel, and then a cherry brandy barrel, which is kind of interesting, right? So you got the cherry, you got the bitters, you got the vermouth, all core parts, components of a good Manhattan cocktail. And of course, rye whiskey. There you go. The finish on it is 10 months in those barrels, and then beyond that it's 103 proof, and the MSRP is $75. Sound good? Let's check it out, yeah? This is the lowest proof of the 3 at 103 proof, by the way. I think the very first thing that comes to mind is, honestly, it smells like an old-fashioned. Like, I'm getting the bitters on the nose, like your Angostura bitters. I'm definitely getting a little bit of that cherry sweetness as well. The vermouth notes are real subtle because the bitters are so strong. Like, bitters are a real prominent, aromatic thing in any cocktail, and you got to be careful about how much bitters you use. That's why it's like you use, some people go so far as having like specific dashing bottles. Well, they'll buy their bitters, but then they will rebottle them into their own dashing bottles that are much more precise with how much bitters you get in your mixing tin or whatever it is you're using. Although usually if you're using bitters, you are stirring it, not shaking it. Anyways, I'm definitely getting a whole lot of bitters on the nose, those Angostura bitters. Your cloves and spices, things like that. Very aromatic and very sweet. Well, let's try it. Cheers. I'm going to tell you what it reminds me of. Hang on. This is almost gone, but it reminds me a lot of the Dancing Goat, Mazed and Confused. This is corn whiskey that's finished in cherry bitters barrels. And this Sagamore reminds me a lot of this, but with less of that corn sweetness, that stewed corn sweetness. Instead, this is giving me some of that musty grape action, which is probably coming from the vermouth, but it is very heavy on the clove and the spice and the cinnamon from the bitters. But that vermouthy funk, it comes all the way around in the finish is really where it starts to step forward and it becomes sort of the star of the show. And that funky vermouth hangs out for quite a while. Yeah, the bitters and the cherry, very prominent up front, very sweet, very aromatic. Well, it's definitely gimmicky. There's no way around it. Like, this is not a standard whiskey pour. This tastes more like a cocktail. It tastes more like a mixed drink than it does a whiskey that you would drink neat. I think I would put this over ice, and I put next to nothing over ice. But this, I think I would prefer to have over just a single block of ice, and it would be for when you're in the mood for a Manhattan. You know what I'm saying? Very peculiar. So I'm definitely a fan of Sagamore because I love a good rye whiskey, and a lot of their stuff is just absolute dynamite, especially like their 9-year this year was incredible. This one's much more gimmicky. It's certainly not bad. I like Manhattans. Some people don't really like Manhattans. Some people are really not into that kind of funky vermouth note. Personally, I like it, so I would drink that, but I'm not sure if you would or not. If I were going to give that a score on my scale, I think I would land at a 6.8 because I think it's good. But I think it's very firmly in the maybe buy category. Like, if you were in the mood for something offbeat, experimental, playful, that might be a good bottle to buy. But if you're looking for just a good rye whiskey, I think for your $75, you might be looking elsewhere. So it really just depends on what you're in the mood for, what you're looking for. Interesting stuff. Thank you, Welsh, for sharing that with me. Let's move on to the next one. This one's quite interesting to me. Okay, this is Corbin Cash. This is the 1917 Merced Rye. And if you're like, what is that? What's a Merced Rye? I just learned it was a thing too, so don't feel bad. But Merced Rye is apparently a unique kind of rye grain that grows specifically. It's being grown in California. And Corbin Cash, what they were doing is they were using it as a cover crop for sweet potatoes. So, obviously you'd farm, you'd harvest your sweet potatoes, but then for the following year, you would then raise the Merced rye instead, and then you would plow it under just to make it nutrient-rich soil, so you're ready to do another season of sweet potatoes after that. So that's what a cover crop is. And the thing about Merced rye that makes it unique is that its root system, I mean, it's extreme. Rye is already, by the way, very resilient as a grain, which is why people in Pennsylvania started using it to make whiskey way back in the colonial days, because barley wouldn't grow there. It was too the soil was too rocky. They needed a grain that was really resilient. So rye would grow there. So they raised rye and then distilled that. So rye is already pretty resilient, but Merced rye takes that resiliency to a different level entirely. So what it does is it can thrive in drought-like conditions because the root system will go down 10 to 15 feet and grab stuff way down underneath the sandy soil and get down into the actual good stuff that's been down there for years, and it can thrive off of that, and it can live in drought conditions, cold conditions, hot conditions, you name it, which is why they are successfully raising Merced rye in California. Now, California whiskeys are not really a thing. California is more well known for vineyards, and wines. It's not really well known for whiskey. Most California distillers are not using local grains. It's grains that they're buying that's being imported, right? It's coming from somewhere else. It's not stuff that's being raised there in California. Well, Corbin Cash is doing it differently because they're using the Merced rye they were using for their cover crops. They're saying, let's get some extra use out of this stuff. Let's distill it. So this is 100% Merced rye. Look at the color on that too. Real dark mahogany. It's got it's not age stated, but they do say that it's none of it is younger than 5 years is what they're saying. And it comes in at 123 proof. Last thing to mention, you're looking at $100 MSRP for this, by the way. So it's not like a super cheap bottle, but it's definitely very, on paper at least, very interesting, very compelling. Let's get in on this. This is extremely grain forward on the nose, very earthy. It makes me think in some ways of OCD number 5 from Glens Creek Distillery, because it has this savory, like almost like a sweet potato casserole thing. And I know I said that they're using this as a cover crop for sweet potatoes, and I don't think that those two things are related, by the way. I don't think they're related, but I am getting that sweet potato casserole, kind of a sweet and savory note on this, on the nose. But I'm also getting like loose grains, dust in a barn kind of a note as well. Yeah, sweet, savory, and earthy nose. Very interesting. Very interesting. Let's try it. Cheers. Holy cow, that is so sweet up front. It doesn't end super sweet, but it starts very sweet. You ever have Bit O' Honey? I know this is kind of a deep cut for younger folks, but people my age are probably like, yeah, I know Bit O' Honey. Bit of honey, little candies, like maple candies with honey in them. They're almost like a little taffy chew. Very sweet. This reminds me of that Bit of Honey. It's like that sweet taffy. I get sweet vanilla, honey, a little bit of maple right up front. Very first thing that hits my tongue. Followed by just this tidal wave of like raw grain notes. Like harvest season in a sip. I grew up in the Midwest. So whenever harvest season comes around, like when you're going from town to town through the countrysides, and there's like these dust particulates filling the air as it's harvest season and crops are being harvested, and it's leaving this almost like a haze of grain dust in the air. I used to ride motorcycles a ton. I still to this day, I've owned more motorcycles than I've owned any other kind of like vans, cars, etc. combined. I sold my bikes after the kids were born, but I still remember harvest season. If I was going down the road on my bike and you could smell all of that. I used to love riding during the harvest season because of that. Or going through like Tunnel of Trees up in Michigan and the whole way there and back. Most of it's in the country. And you would get these kinds of dust particulate grainy notes in the air. I loved that smell. If that smell could be turned into a taste, like a flavor component, that's what I get hit with right in the mid palate of this sip. The finish is a slightly sweet, really tannic oak, almost like the mouthfeel you would get off of a Merlot. Man, what an interesting sip. I gotta say, I like it. I actually like this quite a bit. I do not think this would be for everybody, but if you really like grain forward profiles, I think you would love this. And that bit of honey and maple right up front is a really nice way for it to introduce itself to your palate before it hits you with all that grain. I like this. I wouldn't mind having a bottle of this, I think. That being said, $100 is not cheap You know, I think you're paying for the fact that it is like grain to glass craft, right? You're going to pay for that. And, you know, 5 years minimum on in terms of the age, and you're paying $100. Like, you do just sort of have to swallow that cost and understand that you're paying for something that's going to be different. I think I would be much more likely to recommend this bottle if it was like $70, $75. $100 is definitely a steep ask to go out on a limb for something that you're not sure you're going to like. I will say for me and my palate, I actually really like this. If I were to give this a score per my scale, I think I would land at like a 7.1, right? 7.1. I really like it. I'm not sure if you would, though. I think it's a very strong, like, maybe buy, leaning towards, I think you should try it if you ever have a chance to at least try a sip of it somewhere. I think you should. I like it. Let's move on. Okay, last but not least, the highest proof of the three today. This is going to be 13th Colony Single Barrel Rye, finished in French oak. Now, I don't think it's finished in a French oak barrel. What I think is going on is it's a single barrel of their rye. But what they do is they then lower French oak spiral into the barrel, okay? And this is something that they do with their Southern Rye. They disclose that now. This is also something that we now know they did with, I think their double oaked bourbon, was maple wood spirals, that were lowered into those barrels. And at first, I think they did not disclose that, and I think I'm told it was a mistake, but some people don't really think that that's something that you would mislabel as an accident. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, we just forgot to disclose. So I don't really have a strong dog in the fight here, okay? It wasn't being disclosed. It's being disclosed now. So now we know that there is maplewood influence in the double oaked bourbon. Now we know that there's these French oak spirals being used in the rye. And I think that's what's going on with this one too, is the label on this bottle doesn't actually say that it was finished in a French oak barrel. I think the word barrel is left out. But it is disclosed that it's finished, right? So we know that there's French oak influence on this, which I'm a big fan of French oak in general. I think French oak is really tasty. It has this wonderful sweet and tannic, component to it. Lots of brown sugar notes that I get off of French oak. So I'm excited to try this nonetheless, and I've yet to be disappointed in any 13th Colony stuff other than just their standard offerings. I think are just kind of fine. But it's their special bottles that consistently impress. And at the end of the day, I just want my whiskey to taste really good, and most stuff I have from them tastes really good. Yes, I definitely want to know what's in the glass. I think transparency is important, but obviously, I just want the whiskey to taste good at the end of the day if I'm drinking it, right? So this is 6 years and 8 months. I'll have to do some digging. I know that originally their rye was MGP sourced. I think it was interesting because I think that there was a bit of another miscommunication here where they were saying it was 96.4 rye, not 95.5. And so people were confused by that and were like, whoa, where are they getting this rye from? Is it their own stuff? Turns out it was then changed to 95.5 and it was MGP rye. But I'm pretty sure almost all of their rye distillate these days is their own. So this is probably their own distillate. Other than that, I know that they have contracted out distilling for specific mash bills before as well, and I think they might still do that just to keep up with demand. This comes in at 131.53 proof, so very hot, close to hazmat territory there. And it is $100 MSRP, but these are usually like, and you're probably going to have a little bit of an upcharge on them, maybe another $10, depends on where you're getting it from. Let's get in on it, yeah? I tell you what, on the nose, it smells like 95.5 rye from MGP. It's that same, I'm not saying that's what it is, I'm saying it's the same notes that I get off of that high rye mash bill. A little bit of anise, but I'm also getting a lot of like maple syrup kind of notes on this sweet brown sugar and maple for sure. We got a lot of sugar shacks around here. A lot of people, local farmers, will make their own maple syrup and then maple candies. I'm a sucker for the maple candies. I love those things. This tastes to me like a maple candy with some walnuts in it. On the nose is kind of where I'm going with that. But there's also this big punchy wave of minty rye. Well, I'm anxious to try this. Cheers. It reminds me a lot, of Fiddler's Toasted Rye. It's another Georgia whiskey company, right? So that's ASW. Their Fiddler Toasted Rye. I love it. I've killed my bottle. It's long gone because it was just something I couldn't keep my hands off of it. Everyone has one of those bottles, where when you see it as you're walking by, it's kind of like when your wife gets out of the shower, she thinks she can just walk straight to the closet, and you're like, hey, hold on. You know what I mean? It's that same kind of vibe. Like you walk into the room and you got all these whiskey bottles, and then there's that one. Every time you see it, you're like, hey, hold on. I gotta Let me get it. You know, you got to give it a grab and take a little hit off of that. That's what that bottle was for me. This is giving me those same vibes. Like, hey, hey, hold on. But I am such a sucker for a like double barreled, double oaked, whatever, like 95.5 rye in general. I just think that those things go so well together that my palate's always singing when those things hit it. And that's this for sure, right? That's this. I'm getting that big anisey, spicy, mint bomb of a rye, but it's also bringing along with it these oak sugars, lots of brown sugar and maple, and it kind of softens it up a bit. It gives it a little bit of balance and body, and I'm a freaking here for it. I'm a sucker for it. If I were to give that a score per my scale, 8.3. Fantastic. Got some heat to it too. Thank you so much, Matt, for sharing. 13th Colony, Matt, thank you so much. The Corbin Cash, that was Kells. Thank you so much, Kells. And then the Sagamore Manhattan, that was Welsh. Thank you so much, Welsh. Woo! Pretty killer lineup today. I enjoyed that. Which one, based off of my notes, which one do you think you would go for most likely? Which would be your preference of these three? As always, thank you so much for tuning into the video. And stay tuned. We have some other stuff that might be coming down the pipe if you're one of our in our Patreon group. Potentially, maybe, I don't want to announce it until it's confirmed, but there could be something cool for y'all. We're also doing the next round of Beat My Bottle, so we sent out a trophy, an award to the last person that beat my bottle, and that was DMC. So he got that custom engraved glass that said that he took me down. We got the next edition of that coming up, so make sure you reach out to Briar in the Discord, if you're in our Discord, if you want to submit something to take down my bottle. This time around, we're doing American Single Malt. So if you think you've got one that can beat mine, mine is going to be the here, I'll just show you. The Pinot Noir Cask Finish Westward American Single Malt. This stuff is dynamite, and which is why it's so low, but I've been waiting because I can't kill this bottle until after we get this competition done because I need to be able to drink it in the blind. But I have wanted to reach for this many times in the past couple of months. So anyways, if you think you've got an American Single Malt that can take my bottle down, make sure you reach out to BriarX in the Discord. With that, cheers, my friends. May you live richly and get better with age. And I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.